Hi, I'm Kelsey Martinez, and I visited the Converse Library here in Boston. It's located in downtown at One Lovejoy Wharf, right on the water. It's beautiful, high-rise ceilings, lots of natural light. The employees have a gym and a coffee shop and a yoga studio to enjoy for free. All of the desks are equipped with Macs. There's plants. There's a lot of pictures, a lot of creative energy you can just feel in the room. It was a really great location. And the library itself serves all of the company, but specifically the shoe designers, the engineers, and the developers. And all of the Converse employees interact with the database in one way or another. But in terms of the physical library, it's going to be the people that are really just working on making the shoe. When I asked the librarians about the mission of the library, they said it's to support the daring aspiration and style of today's youth. So on their website, it actually says, Converse believes that unleashing the creative spirit can change the world. We strive to make a positive impact in the communities in which we live and work. We empower our community partners to unleash their creative spirit through music, art, and skate, with a focus on inspiring and enabling young people to be their true, authentic selves. We aim to connect, be useful, and be a company that cares, which I definitely felt from Jessica and Leslie, who I talked to. They definitely look to the youth for style inspiration, and they look to use sustainable partners for the environment when they're working with different vendors. So the library is staffed pretty small. It's actually only 4 people, and I talked to 2 of them, which was cool. So Leslie, the operations manager, reports to the developing director, who is in charge of the entire floor, which was the 6th floor, is what floor I visited. So I wasn't able to talk with them. They don't really directly deal with the library. So Leslie's role is really the cross-functioning of the materials library department to other areas. To those users I talked about earlier, the designers, the engineers, the merchandisers. So she's really making sure that as a library, they're working well with the other departments and staff. And she also is in charge of managing the efforts to work with only the most sustainable vendors. So Converse is owned by Nike, and Nike has a sustainability rating system. So on all of the rows for the materials library, there's actually like scores of each vendor that's in the row based off of their sustainability. So I thought that was really awesome. They're definitely focused on environmental consciousness. So Leslie actually is the one who really focuses on finding those sustainable vendors and looking at which vendors are getting better and which may not be, so that they can work with only the best and most sustainable. So the Converse library is unique. The shoe section, remember, is what I'm talking about specifically. So it contains hundreds of fabric and apparel swatches. They're all organized by vendor and then by type. So like I said, there's a separate apparel materials library, and the shoe library is not focused on structure materials, it's focused on fabric materials, so like the fashion side kind of. There's no formal check-in or check-out system. It's very open, so people can just come and go and grab whatever they want, and then there is a return rack, which was pretty messy, to be honest. It was like 3 rungs of like squished in swatches, and all 4 librarians take turns going through that and returning them to the proper place. Somebody does it like once a day. So after 2 years, all items are weeded unless they were used in a previous launch, if they are actually used in a shoe. And then they actually have binders of all of the materials vendors that were used to make a specific shoe, and those are never thrown out. So the only problem with that is that so the shelves are set up, I'll show a picture, but there's like a metal rung and they hang it with hangers. So there's actually no shelves, it's just like a metal bar. So these binders like are just really thrown, they're not organized at all, they're just like thrown in an area. So budgetary restrictions are actually the reason why they don't have shelves, which is kind of a bummer. So information services provided, it's a lot of questions from the developers and designers about vendors or materials. They'll mostly ask for a specific material, something like a waterproof glittery material, like which vendor is best, or anything like that. So they answer a lot of questions. They say that they spend a lot of time doing that, especially when it gets closer to launching. And then The technology is delivered to for these information services. They do have a database, like I said, but they mostly communicate over email. So Jessica actually was hired on to create the controlled vocabulary used within the Converse database, which is really cool. It took her 2 years to come up with, and it's finally being utilized. So that way, when people are performing searches within the database, it's uniform, it's much easier and much more usable. So she definitely talked with the developers a lot to see what kind of information is needed for them to know about materials. She's working with vendors. They send her Excel spreadsheets with textile and fabric information, which she then has to upload into the system. And she says it's actually easier to do it manually because Excel doesn't work well. The crosswalk isn't great between the two platforms. So she said there's a lot of specific punctuation requirements, which is just frustrating for the vendors because they don't know the system like she does. So she often spends a lot of her time doing that. And she usually answers the questions by searching the database, just doing research like you and I would. If she doesn't know something specifically, she'll always reach out to the vendor that she would think has whatever the designer is looking for. So they do Converse does a biannual check-in. The librarians will informally meet with different departments to do a check-in and see how things are working and not working for them in order to meet their needs and improve services. So one thing that they're trying to work on is actually a new organization system of the library, because they find that a lot of designers will just continuously go to the same vendor every time because they're familiar with it, and that's how it's organized, is by vendors. So they're trying to change that so they can kind of even the playing field and get some smaller companies on the ground. They're also using a different type of hanger. They're like laser cutting, like almost like construction paper, so that they can put information right on the hanger, which was cool. In my opinion, I think that the Converse Library is doing a great job of ensuring its success in the future simply by staying relevant and communicating with the other departments on their needs. The designers are always going to need materials to create the shoes with, so for the librarians to remain relevant, they just really need to remain knowledgeable and figure out future trends, doing research, and just being as helpful as they can. In terms of the SLA competencies, I think that the Converse Library is doing a great job on information and knowledge services. They definitely recognize and articulate their user needs very well, and they also analyze constantly their workflow and their processes in order to be the most productive and successful for their team. It's very team-oriented. So if something's not working, they're not going to continue doing it. They're going to change. It's definitely a very proactive, modern feeling environment. I also think that they're doing a good job on the information and knowledge systems and technology competency. I didn't get a chance to really play around with the database. Unfortunately, the ladies had to go to a meeting. But like I said, Jessica actually develops the coded vocabulary used to catalog items in the database, which is awesome. And they have a really good retention and destruction policy going, and that they're always looking to improve. The one thing that I think they could improve on is the organization of data, information, and knowledge assets physically. Like I mentioned before, they are trying to come up with a new organization schema, just to even the playing field, make it a little bit more usable. They are working on budgetary restrictions to get shelves. So I think that their organization could use some work, but I really do think that the Converse librarians know their users, and they're always looking to help their users and improve their services.